They said no tenant ever succeeds in Mrs. Verona's house, but when Joy moved in, she didn't know she was stepping into a place where dreams die, secrets breathe, and destinies are trapped. One cursed house, one brave woman. A battle between fear and freedom begins now. This is the house where tenants fail. Stay tuned, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Joy stepped out of the crowded bus with her small suitcase and a tired sigh. The city air felt heavy, mixed with dust, noise, and strange excitement. She had dreamed of coming to this city for years, a place where people changed their lives and built new beginnings. But reality was already showing her that dreams in the city were not easy. Mark, her childhood friend, waved from across the road. "Joy, over here!" She dragged her suitcase to him and forced a smile. "I'm so tired, Mark. We've been looking for a room since morning." "I know," he said, shaking his head. "But don't worry. We will find something today." They had visited 6 different compounds already, each one too expensive, overcrowded, or already taken. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in soft orange light. Joy looked around and whispered, "Maybe I should just go back home." Mark stopped walking and looked at her seriously. "No, you came here to build your business. You cannot give up on the first day." Joy nodded, even though her legs felt weak from walking. Just then, a house agent walked toward them. "You people still dey find room?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Joy answered quickly. "Please, anywhere that is affordable." The agent looked around nervously, then leaned closer. "There is one place. Cheap, very cheap, but—" He paused. "But what?" Joy asked. The agent's eyes shifted left and right. "It's Mrs. Verona's compound. People say strange things about that place, but if you want cheap, that is the cheapest room in this whole area." Mark's face changed immediately. "No, no, no," he said. "We're not going there." Joy frowned. "Why? What is wrong with the place?" Mark took a deep breath. "Joy, have you not heard? Nobody succeeds in that house. Every tenant that enters loses something important. Job, business, marriage, health. Something always goes wrong." Joy swallowed slowly. "But is it true? Maybe it's just gossip." Mark shook his head. "My cousin lived there for 2 months. He lost his job, his shop got burnt, and he left the place with nothing. People say the house is cursed." The agent looked away, pretending not to hear. Joy's heart pounded. She came with little money. She had no family in the city. The thought of sleeping outside scared her more than any story. "Let's just go and see it," she whispered. Mark sighed heavily but agreed. They walked for several minutes until the road became quieter. The compound they arrived at looked old and tired. The gate creaked loudly when the agent pushed it open. Inside, the walls were cracked, the ground dusty, and the air strangely silent, as if no one breathed inside. Suddenly, a woman stepped out from the shadows, tall, calm, cold. Her eyes were sharp, like she could see through anyone. "Welcome," she said slowly. "I am Mrs. Verona." Joy forced a smile. "Good evening, Ma. I heard you have a room for rent." Mrs. Verona studied her from head to toe without blinking. "Yes, follow me." Mark leaned close and whispered, "Joy, I don't like this place." But Joy followed the woman anyway. Mrs. Verona led them to a small room with a wooden door. She opened it, and Joy stepped inside. The room was small but clean enough. And most importantly, the price was something she could afford. Mrs. Verona handed her the key. "You can move in tonight." Joy hesitated, holding the cold metal key in her palm. The stories, the silence, the strange feeling, all of it pressed on her chest. But she had no other choice. She nodded slowly. "I'll take it." As she stepped out of the room, the compound suddenly felt colder. Joy didn't know it yet, but the house had already noticed her. Joy woke up early the next morning, hoping to feel excited about her new start. But instead, she felt a heavy silence sitting on her chest. The compound was quiet. Too quiet, like everyone was hiding from something. She stepped outside her room and looked around. 3 other tenants sat outside, peeling yam and washing clothes. Their faces were long and tired, like people carrying invisible weight. Joy smiled warmly and waved. "Good morning," she said. They looked at her, gave weak smiles, and returned to what they were doing. No one even asked her name. No one tried to start a conversation. She found it strange but ignored it. Maybe they were just shy. Minutes later, the wooden gate opened loudly. Mrs. Verona walked in with slow steps, holding a small black book. Every tenant immediately stood up straight, as if obeying an unspoken rule. Joy watched quietly. Mrs. Verona's eyes swept across the compound. "No noise in this house," she said sharply. "No loud music, no loud praying, no visitors after 7 p.m. And—" she looked at Joy. "No gatherings." Joy blinked. "No gatherings?" Mrs. Verona smiled thinly. "I don't like too many people together. It brings trouble." Joy nodded slowly, even though her heart felt uneasy. Mrs. Verona continued, "If you have a complaint, you talk to me alone. No gossiping with neighbours. No laughing outside at night." Then she closed her black book and walked away without another word. As soon as she entered her room and shut the door, the other tenants released long, tired breaths. Joy whispered, "Is she always like this?" A middle-aged woman looked at her. "You must be new here," she said softly. "I'm Mrs. Peters." Joy smiled. "Yes, I just moved in yesterday." Mrs. Peters nodded sadly. "Welcome, and be careful." "Careful? Why?" Before Mrs. Peters could answer, another tenant quickly signalled with her eyes. Mrs. Verona's curtain had moved slightly, as if someone was watching from inside. Mrs. Peters closed her mouth immediately and returned to washing her clothes. Joy felt a shiver. She went back inside her room and sat on the bed. Suddenly the light bulb blinked twice and went off. She checked the switch. It was still on. "That's strange," she whispered. When she opened her food flask, she gasped. Her bread, which she bought last night, was already mouldy. She frowned and dropped it on the table. "This can't be normal." A knock on the door made her jump. She opened it and saw Mrs. Peters standing there, eyes full of fear. "Joy, can I talk to you inside?" Joy stepped aside to let her in. Mrs. Peters closed the door gently. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "People don't talk freely in this compound. Mrs. Verona does not like it when tenants make friends. She always knows when tenants get close." Joy frowned. "But why?" Mrs. Peters shook her head. "I don't know. I used to have a shop. It was doing well. But when I moved into this house, everything went down. My customers left. Trouble followed me everywhere." Joy swallowed. "Is it true that no tenant succeeds in this house?" Mrs. Peters nodded slowly. "Yes. I've been here for 3 years. I've watched many people come and go. Some left broken, some left with nothing." Joy sat down, confusion gripping her. "I came here to start a new life. To build something," she whispered. Mrs. Peters placed a hand on her shoulder. "Joy, pray silently in your heart. Not loud, never loud. Mrs. Verona hates loud prayers." Joy felt her chest tighten. "But I'm not someone who gives up easily," she said firmly. Mrs. Peters looked at her with sad eyes. "I hope your strength is enough, because this house takes more than it gives." Before Joy could reply, the bulb in her room suddenly flicked back on by itself, bright, glaring, and cold. The two women froze. Mrs. Peters whispered, "Welcome to the house where nothing is normal." Joy woke up the next morning to raised voices outside her window. She rushed out and found a young man dragging his bags angrily toward the gate. His clothes were scattered, his shoes mismatched, and his eyes red like someone who had not slept. "I'm done. I'm done with this useless place," he shouted. 2 women tried to calm him down, but he pushed their hands away. "This house has destroyed my life. Since the day I moved here, everything has gone wrong. My job gone, my fiancé left me, my business finished." He kicked a bucket angrily. "Mrs. Verona, may God judge you." He stormed out and banged the gate behind him. The compound fell silent. Joy felt her stomach twist. It was one thing to hear stories, but seeing someone break down in front of her eyes was something else. Mrs. Peters folded her arms sadly. "That's the third tenant leaving this month," she whispered. Joy looked at her. 3 in 1 month? "Yes," Mrs. Peters said softly. "This house drains people. You might start strong, but as time goes on, you lose everything." Joy shook her head. She didn't want to believe such a thing. She refused to. Later that day, Joy decided to start her small business. She arranged her bags neatly and prepared her items to sell in the market. She wanted to prove she could succeed anywhere, even here. Mrs. Verona stepped out of her room and watched her quietly. "You're going out?" she asked. "Yes, Ma," Joy replied with a polite smile. "I'm starting my business today." Mrs. Verona stared at her for a long moment and nodded slowly. "Be careful with your expectations. This city is hard." Joy forced a smile and walked out. At the market, her morning went well. Customers liked her items. Some even promised to return. Joy felt hope rising again. Maybe this house wasn't as bad as people said. But things changed quickly. First, dark clouds gathered suddenly. Within minutes, heavy rain fell and soaked her goods. She tried to cover them, but the wind kept blowing off her nylon sheets. Then, a tray of her items mysteriously fell off the table, even though she had kept it balanced. People around shook their heads. "Ah, sorry-o," one woman said. "Maybe today is not your day." Joy didn't give up. She stayed under the rain, protecting what she could. When she finally packed up to go home, she discovered her small purse with part of her money was missing. She searched everywhere and even retraced her steps, but it was gone. Her eyes filled with tears. 3 problems in one day? She walked back home slowly, feeling defeated. As she entered the compound, some neighbours outside whispered, "Poor girl. She just moved to Verona's house." Her suffering has started. Joy pretended not to hear, but every word stabbed her heart. Inside her room, she sat on her bed and held her head in her hands. "This can't be happening, not to me. Not so soon." The bulb flickered again. Tap, tap, tap. Something sounded in the ceiling, like footsteps. Joy's heartbeat quickened. "What is that?" She stepped outside, hoping to distract herself. The compound felt darker than usual. Mark arrived minutes later holding an umbrella. "Joy, I heard the rain messed up the whole market. How was your first day?" Joy looked at him with tired eyes. "Mark, it was a disaster. Everything went wrong." Mark sighed deeply. "Joy, I'm begging you. Leave this house. I don't like this place." Joy shook her head. "I don't have enough money to move again." Mark held her hands gently. "Then please be careful. Don't trust this place." As they talked, they heard a soft whisper from the far corner of the compound, like 2 people talking quietly. Joy and Mark turned. Mrs. Verona was standing under the dim corridor light, speaking softly to the darkness. But there was no one there. Joy felt her whole body freeze. "Mark," she whispered. "Who is she talking to?" Mark swallowed. "Joy. Let's go inside. Now." They stepped back, slowly. Suddenly, the faint voice Mrs. Verona was speaking to seemed to whisper back. But Joy couldn't see anyone. Joy barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered Mrs. Verona talking to the empty corner of the compound. At first, she tried convincing herself that maybe Mrs. Verona had been on the phone. But no, there was no phone in her hand, and there was no light from any screen. She had been whispering to someone, or something Joy could not see, and that scared her more than she wanted to admit. Around midnight, Joy finally drifted into a light sleep until she heard a soft knock on her door. Knock, knock, knock. Her heart jumped. She sat up quickly. "Who is it?" she whispered. "It's me, Mrs. Peters," a shaky voice replied. Joy rushed to open the door. Mrs. Peters stepped inside, trembling, her wrapper barely tied around her body. "Mrs. Peters, what happened?" Joy asked, helping her sit. Mrs. Peters wiped sweat from her forehead. Joy, something was pressing me tonight. I tried to shout Jesus, but my voice refused to come out. I felt something heavy sitting on my chest. Joy froze. Goosebumps covered her skin. Mrs. Peters continued, voice breaking. I couldn't stay in my room. I needed somewhere safe. Joy, please, can I sleep here for tonight? Joy nodded quickly. Of course, don't worry. Mrs. Peters lay on the floor, still shaking. Joy sat beside her, afraid to sleep. The room felt thick, like unseen eyes were watching them. They stayed awake for almost an hour before Mrs. Peters whispered, Joy, do you know the story of this house? Joy looked at her. No, but I think you want to tell me. Mrs. Peters sighed heavily. Many years ago. Before Mrs. Verona built this compound, she lived in a terrible place. A landlord tormented her, mocked her, insulted her. She suffered so much. Joy frowned. But suffering shouldn't make someone treat others badly. Mrs. Peters nodded. True. But something changed in her. When she finally got money to build her own house, she swore no one would look down on her again. Some people say she went somewhere. To someone. For protection. Joy's heartbeat quickened. You mean charms? Mrs. Peters whispered. Some say she was given something to keep tenants humble. And that thing feeds on the success of whoever stays here. Joy shook her head firmly. I don't believe that. But inside her heart, fear crept in slowly. Morning came with heavy grey clouds. The compound was silent again. Mrs. Peters quietly returned to her room. Joy was left alone, cleaning her room. As she swept under her bed, the broom hit something small and hard. She knelt down and pulled it out. It was a small carved wooden object tied with red thread. Joy stared at it, feeling cold. What is this? Before she could think, she felt a shadow pass beside her, even though the window was closed and no one was in the room. Joy dropped the object quickly. Her breathing became fast. She grabbed her phone and stepped outside for fresh air. As soon as she opened her door, she saw Mrs. Verona standing on the corridor. Joy gasped. Mrs. Verona's eyes dropped to Joy's hand, then to her face. Her voice was calm but strangely sharp. What did you touch? Joy hid her trembling hand behind her. Nothing, Ma. Mrs. Verona took one slow step forward. Be careful. Many things in this house are not your concern. Joy nodded quietly. Mrs. Verona gave her one long look before turning and walking away. Joy watched her until she entered her room and disappeared. The compound felt colder than before. Later in the evening, as Joy fetched water from the tap, another tenant suddenly collapsed and fell flat on the ground. People rushed to help. The woman was shaking, unable to speak. Joy stared, heart pounding. How many people must suffer here? She whispered. She returned to her room and sat on the bed, staring at the strange wooden object she had found. She could feel it. This house was not ordinary, and it was hiding something far darker than the tenants knew. Every time she touched it, her body felt cold, like someone poured ice water inside her. She knew she couldn't keep it. She wrapped it inside a nylon bag and prayed silently in her heart. God, whatever this thing is, let it lose its power. Her voice was barely a whisper. She remembered Mrs. Peters' warning. Pray quietly. Mrs. Verona hates loud prayers. Joy stepped outside, walked behind the building and dug a small hole with a piece of metal she picked from the backyard. She dropped the wooden charm inside, poured kerosene on it, and set it on fire. The flames rose quickly. The nylon melted. The red thread burned. The wooden object cracked loudly like something alive was breaking. Joy stepped back, fear gripping her. Suddenly, the wind picked up sharply, blowing dust everywhere. The compound gate banged on its own. A window slammed shut, even though no one touched it. Joy felt her heartbeat in her ears. She whispered, "What have I done?" That night, everything changed. The moment Joy lay on her bed, her room began to feel hotter than usual, as if someone had turned off the air in the whole building. Sweat dripped down her neck, but a cold breeze blew through the window at the same time. Her light bulb flickered violently. Tap, tap, tap. Something knocked on her window. Joy sat up quickly. "Who's there?" she whispered. No answer. Then, bang! Her door shook loudly. She jumped. Something, or someone, ran across her corridor so fast she only saw the shadow. Joy held her pillow tightly. "What is happening?" she whispered. She tried to pray softly, but her voice trembled. Outside, she heard footsteps. Not one person, not two. Multiple footsteps, walking around aimlessly in the middle of the night. She stood up slowly and peeped through the window. The compound was empty, but she could still hear them. Footsteps everywhere. Joy's body shook with fear. She stepped away from the window and leaned on her wall. A whisper brushed her ear. "Why did you burn it?" Joy screamed and covered her mouth quickly. "No, no, no." The whisper came again. "You should not have touched what you don't understand." Joy fell to her knees, shaking uncontrollably. Suddenly, the knocking stopped. The footsteps ended. The room became cold, painfully cold. Then, tock. Joy turned slowly. Mrs. Verona was standing in her doorway, not knocking, not calling her, just standing there, silent, tall, watching. Joy's breath froze. "Mrs. Verona, what are you doing here?" she stammered. Mrs. Verona stepped inside slowly, her eyes sharp like blades. "You touched something in this compound today," she said quietly. "You destroyed something that was not yours." Joy's throat dried. I don't know what you're talking about." Mrs. Verona's face changed, not angry, not sad, something deeper. "Joy," she whispered, "you do not understand the price of disobedience." A cold breeze swept through the room even though the windows were closed. Mrs. Verona turned and walked away, leaving Joy frozen in fear. The next morning, Joy's worst nightmare continued. When she opened her shop space at the market, she found most of her goods torn apart. Some were missing, some were covered in sticky black liquid she couldn't explain. She dropped to her knees. "Why is this happening to me?" she cried. Her phone rang. Mark's voice came through. "Joy, what's going on? You sound weak." Joy wiped tears from her face. "Mark, everything is falling apart. I don't think this is ordinary." Mark breathed heavily. "I warned you. Let's go and see Mrs. Grace." "Now." Joy's voice shook. "Who is she?" "She's someone who knows about these things. She has helped people before." Joy agreed. They took a bike to a quiet part of the city where a small wooden house stood. Mrs. Grace opened the door before they even knocked. Her eyes were wise, her face calm, as if she already knew they were coming. She looked directly at Joy and said, "Child, you brought something from a house that eats destinies." Joy gasped. "How did you know?" Mrs. Grace stepped aside. "Because your spirit is crying louder than your voice. Sit down, my dear. You are fighting something you do not understand." Joy sat quietly, trembling. Mrs. Grace poured oil into a small bowl. "You are not the first person that house has tried to destroy," she said, "but you can be the last. If you are ready to fight." Joy swallowed slowly, fear and courage mixing inside her. "I am ready," she whispered. Mrs. Grace nodded. "Then prepare your heart. Tonight, your battle begins." Joy returned to Mrs. Verona's compound with trembling hands. Mrs. Grace's words echoed in her mind. "Tonight, your battle begins." She held the small bottle of anointing oil tightly. Mark walked beside her until they reached the gate. "Joy, are you sure you want to go in there tonight?" he asked quietly. Joy nodded. "I can't keep running. If I leave this house without fighting, whatever is in here will follow me." Mark swallowed hard. "Okay. But call me if anything happens. I'll stay awake." Joy forced a smile and stepped inside the compound. It felt unusually quiet. Even the night breeze felt heavy. When she entered her room, she closed the door gently and sat on the bed. For a moment, she considered waiting till morning. But then she remembered her destroyed business, her stolen money, her bad dreams, and the strange voices. "No," she whispered. "It ends tonight." She stood up, opened the bottle of anointing oil, and placed a small dot on her forehead. Then she anointed her door, window, and the four corners of her room. The light bulb flickered. Joy ignored it. She knelt down. "God, give me strength," she whispered. And then she began to pray. Not loudly, not shouting, just strong, deep, determined whispers. But the house heard her, and the house responded. A sudden wind blew through the room even though the windows were closed. Her curtain lifted like someone walked past it. The door rattled as if someone pushed it from the outside. Joy kept praying. Her voice shook, but she refused to stop. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps echoed in her corridor. Joy's breath caught in her throat. The footsteps grew louder. Then, boom! Her light bulb burst, throwing the room into darkness. Joy screamed but kept praying. Footsteps ran across the corridor, back and forth, faster and faster. It sounded like more than one person, like a crowd running in panic. Joy stood up shakily and closed her eyes. "God, please help me, please." Something scratched her door. Slowly, then faster. Joy bit her lip to stop herself from crying. Suddenly, thud! Something hit the door hard. Then, silence. Dead silence. Joy's heart pounded so loudly she felt it in her throat. Then she heard it. A voice. Soft. Cold. Very close to her door. "Joy?" Her knees weakened. The voice whispered again. "Stop what you're doing before you make things worse." Joy stepped back, shaking violently. "No," she whispered. "I won't stop." She lifted the bottle of oil and walked toward the door. Her hand shook so badly the oil almost spilled. With trembling courage, she touched the door with the oil and whispered, "This room is protected." Instantly, a loud scream filled the corridor. Not human, not animal, something in between. Joy dropped the oil and covered her ears. "Ah!" Her door shook again. Then she heard heavy footsteps running toward her room. She stepped back. The door handle turned slowly. Once, twice. Then it twisted hard as if someone was trying to break in. Joy wanted to scream, but her voice disappeared. Then, the door flew open. Joy gasped. Mrs. Verona stood there, but her face looked different. Angry, sharp, and strangely pale. Her eyes were wide with fear and rage. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Verona hissed. "Do you want to destroy everything? Do you know what you're waking up?" Joy shook her head. "I won't let this house destroy me." Mrs. Verona stepped inside slowly. The other tenants opened their doors and peeped out. Some gasped, some whispered, some pressed their hands to their mouths. Everyone could feel it. Something invisible was moving through the compound. Mrs. Peters came out shaking uncontrollably. "Joy, stop! Please stop!" she cried. But Joy lifted the anointing oil again with trembling determination. Mrs. Verona shouted, "Joy! Do you know what you're doing?" Her voice echoed through the compound like thunder. Doors banged, windows shook, tenants rushed out, surrounding the corridor, trembling, confused, afraid. And there Joy stood, alone but unbroken, facing Mrs. Verona with courage she didn't know she had. The night was far from over, but the war had already begun. The entire compound stood still. Tenants gathered at their doors, shivering, eyes wide, unable to understand what was happening. Joy stood in the middle of the corridor with the anointing oil in her hand, facing Mrs. Verona like someone ready to fight for her life. Mrs. Verona's chest rose and fell sharply. "You don't know what you're doing," she repeated, voice shaking in a way Joy had never heard before. "Put that oil down, Joy. Now." Joy shook her head. "No, I won't live in fear anymore. This house has taken too much from too many people." Mrs. Peters stepped forward, trembling. "Joy, please. She is right. Don't push this any further." "No," Joy said firmly. "Someone needs to push. Someone needs to stop whatever is hiding in this place. Just then, the gate creaked open. Everyone turned. Mrs. Grace walked in, calm and unbothered, holding a wooden staff. Her presence alone made the night air shift. The tenants gasped with relief, and even Mrs. Verona stiffened. Mrs. Grace looked around with sharp, wise eyes, then spoke quietly. "It is time." Mrs. Verona stepped back. Her face went pale. "Why are you here?" Mrs. Grace ignored the question and faced the tenants. "All of you, step out. Tonight, truth must be spoken." The tenants, shaking but curious, stepped into the corridor. Some were crying silently. Others held their children close. The air felt thick with invisible tension. Mrs. Grace turned to Mrs. Verona. "Speak." Mrs. Verona looked away. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Speak," Mrs. Grace repeated, voice louder. "These people deserve the truth." Tears gathered in Mrs. Peters' eyes as she whispered, "Please, Ma, tell us." Mrs. Verona's hands trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a moment, she looked like someone fighting a war inside her own mind. Finally, with a shaky breath, she said, "Many years ago, I was nothing." The tenants listened closely. "I lived in a small house where a wicked landlord treated me like trash. He insulted me, threw my belongings outside, mocked my poverty." Her voice cracked. "I told myself that if I ever built my own house, no one alive would ever disrespect me again." She swallowed hard. "So, I went to someone. A man. A spiritual man. He gave me protection." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Something to make sure tenants never rise above me." The tenants gasped in horror. Joy felt her heart tighten. "So it's true," she whispered. Mrs. Verona covered her face with her hands. "I didn't know it would become this bad. I didn't know it would drain people, destroy their destinies. I only wanted respect. I only wanted control." "You wanted power," Mrs. Grace said calmly. "Power never comes cheap." Mrs. Verona nodded slowly, tears falling. "I felt so helpless back then. And when the man gave me that charm, he said it would make me strong. But instead, it made me a prisoner. I have not known peace since I built this house." Mrs. Peters broke down crying. "All these years, all our suffering, all our losses, because of this?" Mrs. Verona sobbed. "I regret it, but I was afraid to let it go. Afraid of losing everything." Mrs. Grace stepped forward and placed a hand on Mrs. Verona's shoulder. "Verona," she said softly, "the people here have suffered enough. It is time to end this. It is time to break what you started." Mrs. Verona trembled from head to toe. But if I break it, everything I built, my protection, my standing, they will all disappear." Joy stepped closer. "Maybe losing that is better than losing your soul." A deep silence filled the compound. The tenants looked at Mrs. Verona with mixed emotions. Anger, pain, fear, and pity. Mrs. Grace raised her staff. "Verona, tonight you choose. Keep your power and continue destroying lives, or free every destiny this house has swallowed." Mrs. Verona cried harder, covering her face. She shook. She trembled. Then she whispered, "I want to free them. I'm tired, I'm sorry, I want to end this." The tenants let out a breath they didn't know they were holding. Mrs. Grace nodded. "Then tomorrow at dawn, we destroy everything hidden in this compound." Joy exhaled shakily, tears filling her eyes. The war was not over, but the truth was finally in the open. The sky was still dark when the first rooster crowed. A soft breeze moved through the compound, brushing against the cracked walls, as if preparing the ground for what was about to happen. Joy opened her eyes before dawn. She didn't sleep much, but, for the first time since moving into Mrs. Verona's compound, she felt a strange calm, like something heavy was about to lift. When she stepped outside, she found Mrs. Grace standing in the centre of the compound, with her wooden staff planted firmly on the ground. Her white scarf moved gently with the breeze. One by one, the tenants came out, moving slowly, like people waking from a long nightmare. Mrs. Verona came last. She looked different, smaller somehow, humbled, her eyes swollen from crying the night before. She clutched her hands tightly as if afraid they might shake. Mrs. Grace nodded at her. "Are you ready?" Mrs. Verona's voice cracked. "Yes." Mrs. Grace raised her staff and spoke clearly. "Today we break every chain hidden in this house. No more stolen destinies. No more pain." Joy felt her heart thump with hope. Mrs. Grace turned to Mrs. Verona. "Lead us. Take us to where you hid them." Mrs. Verona took a deep breath and walked toward a small storeroom at the back of the compound. She unlocked it with trembling fingers. The door creaked open. Everyone gasped. Inside were strange items tied together with red thread, pieces of wood, bottles with dark liquid, cracked clay pots, small bags of powder, things no one could explain. Mrs. Peters covered her mouth. So, this was what trapped us. Mrs. Grace stepped inside, lifted one of the charms with her staff, and dropped it into a metal bowl she had brought. "Gather everything," she instructed. The tenants, though scared, followed her lead. Joy helped too, picking each object carefully with a cloth. Mrs. Verona watched silently, guilt heavy on her shoulders. When the last charm was collected, Mrs. Grace carried the bowl to the centre of the compound. "Verona," she said softly, "this part, you must do yourself." Mrs. Verona stepped forward, tears running down her face. She knelt beside the bowl. "I release every destiny this house has taken," she whispered. "I break every evil thing I accepted. I set all tenants free, and I set myself free." Her voice shook as she struck a match. She dropped it into the bowl. Wahoosh! The flames rose high. The tenants stepped back, their hearts racing. The fire burned unnaturally bright, red, orange, white, as if something unseen was fighting its way out. Then, a sudden wind blew across the whole compound, swirling dust and shaking windows. For a moment, everyone held their breath. Then, silence. A deep, peaceful silence. Mrs. Grace closed her eyes. "It is done." Joy let out a long breath she had been holding. Mrs. Peters fell to her knees, crying with relief. Other tenants hugged each other, trembling from the sudden release of years of hidden suffering. As the morning sun finally rose, warm light touched the compound for the first time in months. Light that felt clean and gentle. Suddenly, phones began to ring. A man shouted, "My job! They called me back! They said the contract is restored!" Another woman screamed joyfully, "My shop! The debt case has been cleared!" Mrs. Peters' phone vibrated next. She answered shakily. "Hello? Yes. Yes. Really?" She burst into tears. "My daughter is healed? She opened her eyes this morning?" Joy felt her own phone buzz in her pocket. She answered. "Hello? Yes, I'm Joy." Her eyes widened. "You want to give me a supply contract? My biggest order ever?" She laughed and cried at the same time. "Yes, yes, thank you." Mrs. Grace smiled softly. "This is what happens when darkness loses its grip." Joy walked over to Mrs. Verona, who stood alone, shaking. "Thank you for doing the right thing," Joy said. Mrs. Verona broke down. "I'm sorry, Joy. I'm sorry for everything." Joy hugged her gently. "We are all free now." By afternoon, the compound was full of laughter, real laughter, for the first time in years. Children played, women cooked, men swept the compound with smiles on their faces. Joy packed her bags. She was moving to a better apartment, but she stepped out of her room slowly, taking one last look. This house, once filled with pain, finally felt different, alive, light, free. Neighbours passing by whispered in shock, "Have you heard? People can succeed in that house again." Joy smiled as she walked through the gate, sunlight kissing her face. Her journey had been painful, but she had conquered a house that once swallowed destinies. A new chapter of her life was waiting, and she was finally ready.